that we do. So he lives in Arizona, and he is, so that's how we met. So this is his bio. He just recently got another credential, Reverend Chris Clay, a metaphysical minister, holistic nutritionist, former California corporate attorney and political lobbyist, former championship youth basketball coach, former public school teacher, and retired Air Force officer, has been a wearer of many hats. Today, he will share his insights on overcoming food addictions and dietary abuses. So at this time, we welcome Dr. Chris Clay.
Thank you, Moselle. Thank you. I appreciate the Heal Thyself Detroit program for having me today. It's an honor to be here with you. I developed a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share if I could. So I'm going to put on my share screen and see if I can pull it up, okay?
Not her, but his name is Chris Clay, and he's a nutrition.
Okay, you guys with me?
I think we are.
Okay, very good. Let's open with the word of prayer. If you could, everybody could, bow for a moment. I'll say a prayer. I call forth into the presence of the Father, Mother God of the universe within myself, that I may be attuned in oneness with your presence in the midst of my being. I declare that in my oneness with the love of your presence, all causes for addictive eating in my life are eliminated from all levels of my mind and from all conditioned reflexes of my body. By the power of your presence and the grace of your supreme spirit within me, I declare that in spirit, mind, and body, I am already free of addictive eating, and that it is only your presence that I choose to fill my body with, as I declare that my body is a temple of the living God. For your complete power for good in my life and over the needs of my mind, soul, and body, I give thanks. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I let it be so. So it is. So it is. So it is. Amen.
Amen.
All right, I got about a half an hour, everybody. So let's jump into it. First of all, I want to let you know that there's no such thing as a perfect diet. No such thing as eating perfectly 100% of the time. That was never required of us as humans. But let's face it, we're so far removed from our natural holistic lifestyle that we have less room for error. And so we have to be more diligent in our eating habits than we ever have been before. Again, I want to thank Moselle P. Scoville, founder and leader of the Heal Thyself Detroit, for her love and service to others, and for inviting me with you this evening. If you have any questions, maybe you could hold them to the end. I'm trying to get through as fast as I can and get to the good part. The first part is just on, we're going to talk a little bit about food addiction or eating disorders, however you want to say it. But I want to spend the bulk of my time on how to sort of approach it and some of the things that I've learned and studied and applied in my own life. So food addiction is basically an intense craving. The word is self-explanatory. We use the word addiction so often in our vernacular. It's like when someone is addicted to alcohol or substance or drugs or something like that, something that becomes habitual, when we do bad things or things that are harmful for us over and over and over again, it overwhelms our body and it becomes ultimately negative for us. Here's where we get a little bit of a rub with food though. When we do pleasure activities such as eating, having sex, and using intoxicants, that releases dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is a feel-good neurotransmitter. So when we eat junk foods and high fat and high sugary foods, that creates an extraordinarily high amount of dopamine in the brain. And so we want to get that feeling over and over and over again. Some of the problems that can cause though is increased appetite, overeating, weight gain, malnourishment. And that has a paradoxical effect, how we can overeat sometimes and yet be malnourished all at the same time. So when we look at food addiction, there are psychological triggers that cause us to want to eat sometimes. We can get used to eating certain foods in certain environments. When we see things or see objects or sounds that remind us of certain foods, we all of a sudden desire that kind of food. And the scientists know this, and so do big food corporations, and they lay it on us pretty thick. This was first discovered about 100 years ago. A Russian scientist named Ivan Pavlov was doing research on the digestive tracts of dogs. And he found that when he gave them food, before they even ate it, they salivated. And he thought to himself, what if I ring a bell at the same time I give them food? What would happen? And so he started ringing a bell and he had the food and they would continue to salivate. Then he took the food away. And when he took the food away and rang the bell, he still got the same reaction, the salivation. The dogs wanted to be fed. And we know that through more recent experiments, this kind of conditioning works across species. You see at the top is a dog. The dog was given food and the dog began to salivate before he ate the food. Then the bell was added and the dog continued to, the bell was added with the food, the dog continued to salivate. And the food was removed and the bell was rung and the dog still salivated. The dog still wanted and expected to eat. They did the same thing with mice. They associated a light, or they gave the mice alcohol in a cup. They gave mice alcohol in a cup, and then they coupled that with a light source. They took away the alcohol, just kept the light, and the mice came up to the cup. The mice still came up to the cup looking for the alcohol. And I was laughing because I was thinking about drunk mice. That's kind of funny to me. But anyway, and it works with people too. In this example, we see that branding coupled with alcohol creates the same sort of effect. You can take away the alcohol and just show me the picture of Peroni beer. And I'll start thinking, wow, I sure would like to have a drink right now, or whatever the thing is. And you see it on TV, it's used in food, it's used in alcohol, it's used in all kind of products. Branding is very sophisticated now. And the scientists and big food knows how to get right to the center of your psychological mind. They have beautiful people on the commercial, happy thoughts, happy scenes, bright colors, and then they're associated with the product, and you will go out and buy it, or you will want to go out and buy it. Another trigger for people is stress and depression, and as we talked about dopamine being in the brain and a feel-good neurotransmitter, obviously when people are stressed out, which we're all in their modern society, we're all under low-level stress continually. It's around us, and so we have to do things to build ourselves up. So I applaud you all for improving your diets. That's at a physical level. We approach that at a physical level, and it's very to do that. But often when we are stressed we feel stressed out or we're depressed or something like, we reach for foods to, especially comfort foods, to help us through this. Now, temporarily, they make us feel good momentarily, but we know long term those foods are ultimately harmful for us, very, very harmful for us. Um, and um, and we have recent studies showing that these foods are least likely to benefit these conditions. And that comes under an emerging field called nutritional psychiatry. Nutritional psychiatry shows a direct relationship between diet and mental wellness. There was a 2015 study, and in that study, 18 scientists concluded that diet is as important to psychiatry as it is to cardiology, endocrinology, and gastroenterology. So you can see if it works for the body, it works for the mind as well, because the brain is part of the body. And so it just makes sense. They just proved it, and there have been many studies subsequent to 2015. But this particular study showed that treat may help prevent, treat, or improve depression, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, anxiety, ADHD, autism, addiction, and eating disorders, etc. Further, that for the mind and the body, we have to get adequate vitamin D3. A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D3, particularly the vegans, and people who don't get enough sunshine. Black people, people of color need more sunlight than Caucasians to get that's the best source of vitamin D. And the second best source, second richest source is fish, cod liver oil or something like that, or even fatty fish. But if you're vegan, I know vegans do other sorts of things to get their D3, but the best sources are the ones I suggested. Myself, I'm plant-based. I'm a plant-based eater, but I do eat meat occasionally, clean source, prepared properly, etc. Anyway, you see omega-3 fish oils, vitamin B complexes, nuts, seeds, adequate protein, green leafies, cruciferous, antioxidant-rich berries. And at the same time, the studies also suggest a drastic reduction in chemical additives, sugars, unhealthy fat, soy, and other things that are harmful for us. This is a list of the top 10 most addictive foods, and you can see most of the foods here are processed. Most of the foods are either a combination of carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, and sugar, or carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, and salt. This slide shows the least addictive foods, and you might look at this list and say, "Oh, this list is pretty boring," but and compared to the previous list, yeah, it does look kind of boring, but it's, the way you prepare these foods, as you all know, if you do a lot of your own cooking, as I do, it's in the seasoning, how you cook the food and what you pair it with and things like that. It can really be tasty. Let's summarize up to this point. All pleasurable activities release dopamine in the brain. Processed foods are harmful for you, as you all know. Junk food releases even more dopamine, more cravings, and often become habit forming. In a robust, nutritionally dense diet of minimally processed foods are the most beneficial and least addictive. I know I didn't lay a good foundation for that last bullet there, but just take my word for it on that point. Just take my word for it on that point. I think that's something we all can agree on anyway. Here's some red flags for people who have food addictions. These are just some of many. There are 30 or 40 of these you could probably lay out there, but when we frequently crave food despite being full, when we eat much more than we intended, like we eat the whole bag, and we eat up to the point of being full or about to throw up. We justify giving in food cravings under the excuse of, or I had a bad day today, or it's my birthday or somebody else's birthday, or it's a holiday. Those are a lot of excuses we can use sometimes to justify getting off the kinds of foods and kinds of dietary principles that we know to be right. And then also another red flag is difficulty refraining from unhealthy foods, despite knowing the consequences. Okay, the fun part for me is overcoming food addiction. So let's jump right into that. I think we're doing pretty good on time. Yeah, we're doing pretty good on time. Okay, I wanted to, I thought it was helpful to approach overcoming food addictions on different levels. So I started out with the physical level and moved on from there. So on the physical level, we look at activity, we look at exercise, we look at the kinds of food that we eat, healthy foods, other green leafies, looks like green juice, vegetable juice, fatty foods, healthy fatty foods there. Avocados are excellent, just excellent source of fat. I try to eat an avocado every day. On the physical level, it's important for us to exercise and stay active, lock in those dietary changes using our own mind and discipline, avoid food additives, and then get adequate sleep and hydration. Also on the physical level, three things I want to talk about. The first is the Weston Price lesson of eating. This is a fascinating story about a dentist who closed his practice, and he had a dental practice in Cleveland in the early 1900s, and he closed it and went around the world, and he traveled in remote villages for 10 years, and he studied the dietary practices of different remote villages and tribal people. He took pictures, he conducted interviews, he ate the food, and he came up with a great conclusion, but his conclusion is that we should eat as close to traditional holistic foods as we can, given we're in a Western society and the time that we live in right now. He the correlation, and he showed that by eating this way, people who live in traditional tribes, they have their jawlines are wider and healthier. Their faces are healthier. They're happier. They don't have any depression, no cavities, no crowding of the teeth. It was a fascinating story. I'd like to teach. I could teach a whole class on that. It's one of the most fascinating stories I've ever heard outside of the Bible. So we want to eat foods as minimally processed as we possibly can. If I wanted to eat oatmeal, for example, and I went to the store and I said, I want to buy some oatmeal. Which one should I get? Well, I got three main choices. I can buy microwave oatmeal, which is processed. I can buy rolled oats, which are moderately processed, and oats are okay. They're all right. But if I really want to go to the least processed, I'll go with steel cut oats, and I will soak them at least 8 hours overnight, pour the water off so I can get rid of the phytates that bind on the grains, so that when I cook the oatmeal, the steel cut oatmeal, the grains open up to me and I get as much nutrients, much nutrition as I possibly can out of that food. So that's the principle that he put out there, and I try to incorporate that in my life, of course. Second one is listen to our bodies. What do you mean, Chris Clay? Listen to our bodies. Our bodies can't talk. Well, yes, we do have a mouth and we can talk out of our mouth, but when I say listen to our body, the body speaks to us in a language, and we have to be astute enough to understand or translate what the body's trying to tell us. And so it talks through us through pain. It talks through us through if we feel radiantly, vibrationally good and healthy and ready and energy, it speaks to us that way. By feel, I would say, and also by the way we look. sometimes we look at our face and we say, oh my God, I'm getting too many wrinkles. Oh my God, I'm getting, my waistline is expanding. Oh my God, my arms are flat. Whatever it is, our body is giving us, it's talking to us. And so we have to be aware enough of our body and in tune with our body and check in with it every day to see how we're doing. And then backtrack from there and make sure we're on the right track. And then the third thing is cook your own food. You know, when I was raised, my mom and dad were from, as Moselle said, from Little Rock, Arkansas, and they were country people. My mom cooked all the time, every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, except Saturday mornings when we had milk and cereal. But she cooked all our home cooked meals and she taught me how to cook. And I cook to this day. I love cooking. But I meet so many people who don't cook their own food. And in today's age, it's a survival skill. So if you don't know how to cook, you should learn the basics. If you can't, if that's just impossible, then you should find a way to get a home cooked meal because it's just vital. It's just, like I said, it's the survival skill. Because if you eat the crap that's out there that other people prepare for you, then you know they're gonna, you know, they use the cheapest products they can, and they don't take the time and care that you would take to put in your food, and a lot of times additives are put in there as well. Okay, I know this is the brain, the theme of this whole, y'all whole sort of block of classes is about about brain health. And so at the mental level, that's really where the battle is really won. All the physical stuff, it starts in the mind. And so let's look at the mental level real quick. I have some positive affirmations that I wrote down. Now, you can write your own positive affirmations. You can feel free to use the ones that I came up with in my own mind. Positive affirmations are nothing but positive statements written in the affirmative that reinforce something that we want to do. And if you say them every day, it reinforces what you're saying. It takes it from the conscious level down to the subconscious level. And if you record something like this and you meditate at the same time you're listening to this, it also affects you on the spiritual level. So it opens up your mind and lets God's mind and your mind come together and really work for to get the desired outcome that you want. So I'll just read these. Thank God I have the power of free will. I use my free will to eat healthy foods that nourish, strengthen, and heal my body. I'm a victor over any bad habit or addictive eating disorder. I'm a good steward of all that I've been blessed with, including my body. I know that it is in my best interest to take care of myself. I avoid highly processed foods and read the back of everything I buy. I use abstinence, moderation, substitution, and/or portion control as appropriate concerning foods and substances which are not necessarily in my highest good. I eliminate food additives, chemicals, and preservatives as much as possible. I cook at home or eat properly prepared home-cooked meals as much as possible. I recognize addictive food triggers and do my best to avoid or minimize their effect on me. So the reason why I read this is because, I mean, you can see it on the screen, but the reason why I read it is because hearing something is at a different level than just seeing it. Seeing it is great, but hearing it, speaking it, and listening to it, you're getting it on a lot of different levels. So you're reinforcing it, the same thing over and over and over again. And by the way, I do make recordings, like guided meditation. So if anybody's interested in getting a recorded guided meditation of the prayer that I made today, along with my positive affirmations, I will just send me your email at the end and I will send it to you in a recorded, and you can do your own meditation and listen to my voice with a little bit of music in the background and those positive affirmations and the prayer. So just hit me up if you're interested. Okay, so here are the strategies that I've tried to incorporate in my own life and live, because I found that they've been very helpful for me. There are 6 of them. There's 6 of them, plus the one at the end. It's just, let me just go through them. So hold on here. When we talk about avoidance, this is sometimes when we have a food that we want to avoid, like processed food products. When we go to the store, for example, we want to avoid this. So I would say on this one, it's basically like if you had a choice between eating at home and eating fast food, you would avoid the fast food. You can use that sometimes, and you can combine these sometimes in different situations to allow yourself to wiggle out of situations where you would otherwise maybe submit to eating foods that you know you shouldn't eat. The second technique is minimization. And that we use that when we want to minimize known junk food triggers, cues, and context. But when I'm watching TV late at night, I know they're gonna bombard me with food commercials. I know if I go to certain channels, I'm gonna get certain things. So I may want to either not watch TV at that time, or mute the sound, or do something else during the commercial, or record the program and fast forward through the commercials if I want to. If I want to minimize that, I can do that. Another way we can do it is when we go shopping, we can eat. We can eat before we go to the grocery store, and that way we won't it to trigger. Those triggers won't make us just get things out of impulse shopping that we know are not good for us and bring it home. Another way we can minimize is by healthy snacks with us to environments that we know we can avoid, like we're going to a family reunion, family get together, a picnic or something. Take some with it all the time, some healthy foods with me all the time, so I don't have to. I'm not there for 4 or 5 hours and I'm starving and I don't want to eat the stuff that's there. So that's another way to minimize food triggers. Moderation is a way to like if we want to eat something, let's say we want to eat dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is good for us. Let's say I like dark chocolate and I want to eat it every day. It may not be in my best interest to eat it every day, but I might make a deal with myself and say, look, let me just eat it every other day. Or if it's dark chocolate has healthy benefits, so I'm not necessarily not on dark chocolate because I love it. But I'm saying if the food is a little bit like, I shouldn't do too much of it. Let's say I like to drink red wine with dinner, but let's just say instead of drinking it every night, having 4 ounces a night with my dinner, I have it every other night with my dinner. That's what I mean. You can and I have something called the 48-hour rule, or the weekly rule. You can do something once a week if you really want to check it. Then that way you still can engage in it, but it's not a habit to the point where you're a slave to it every day. We can use substitution for healthier versions. Getting back to the chocolate example, if we like chocolate, make sure it's dark chocolate with a low amount of sugar in it. They got a good company called Leafies. They make dark chocolate and they use stevia instead of sugar in the chocolate, which is the brand that I prefer to eat. Anyway, abstinence when moderation is not an option. Abstinence is when something's really, really bad, like let's say GMO foods, products. There's, I want to avoid that like the plague. Or if it's a food allergy, I have an allergy to a certain food, then I want to abstain, because in that situation, moderation is not good for me to do that. And then portion control. We just reduce the amount of foods that we eat. Sometimes I see people put food on their plate and you think they're feeding like a cow or a pig or something. And I know a woman who lost 50 pounds by just reducing her portion controls. And she was really, small in her portions, and she lost 50 pounds. It was amazing. She's very slender now. And then 7th is just negotiate with yourself when you are faced with decisions like this, but realize that you have to take control. You're in control. And then other things, commodified behavior, as I said before, the television. Just be aware that sometimes we have peer pressure, sometimes family activities we must go to, and we still want to, we want to be healthy. Sometimes I cook a meal, entree, and take it over to my family activity as well. Most of the times, my food is one of the fastest one that gets eaten up. So you can make food really, really healthy. That's with seasoned with herbs and the way we cook them and things like that. The quality of food that we buy. Okay, let's look at the spirit, and I put the spiritual level in here, not just because I'm a metaphysical minister, but I put it in here because anytime we have something that is we can't on our own, or we haven't been able to overcome it, then it makes sense to call in a higher power or higher source, or try to get help that we need. And what better help than divine help from God, from the angels, from our spirit guides and other divine beings, etc. So it's very important that we bring the spiritual aspect into everything we do, actually, because it really supercharges whatever we're trying to do. You look at any scriptures or these stories in the Old Testament, when we do something and then we ask God to help us do it, then I remember Christ was saying, if we have a little bit of faith, then we can move mountains in our lives. But it's all tied in with the spirit. It's all tied in with spiritual aspects. And so if you want to really overcome something, you should and you want to be successful at it, you don't want to just play around with it, then you should bring the spiritual aspect into it. They do it in Alcoholics Anonymous. They do it in Overeaters Anonymous. And I found it to be very effective. So this is a little bit more on that. Why incorporate a spiritual component into our eating practices? When we tap into our personal spirituality, our focus turns from ourselves, and we can face the world with optimism and hope. And through difficulty, spirituality can be comforting and uplifting. It lets us know we're not alone, that we are loved, that we do matter, and invites the supreme power and presence to help us. So Proverbs 16:3 says, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. So in conclusion, if you have an issue there, just know that you can do it. Don't give up, don't give in, stay positive, believe in yourself, love yourself. Don't sit around feeling sorry for yourself or blame yourself, and don't watch the negative things that come out of our mouths. Sometimes we say things just out of habit, and we say things about ourselves, or we say things about other people, or we say things about what we're doing. Cancel that, and start over and repeat it in a positive way. It's very important, because we speak things into existence. We can speak things into existence, and we can literally speak things out of existence as well. There's my contact information. I'll leave it up on the screen for a little while, and at the same time, I'll stop here and ask if anyone has any questions. I think we're doing